on the east coast of the United States. I have no idea what time it is down and under, but it is time for Shiny Side Out with Dave and Mecky. So I hope you have your tinfoil hat all made and cinched down tight over your ears. So take it away, Dave and Mecky.
Welcome to Shiny Side Out with Dave. Still waiting for Mecky. It's all good. On WZZR, broadcasting from Australia for Revolution Radio on, you guessed it, www.revolution.radio, where it's more than just radio. So jump into the chat room if you can. This is show number 397 because it's on air, online, and on your smart device. So grab an app to listen from anywhere, or listen at home on a Grace tabletop digital radio. Thanks, Amiga Legos. If you missed Solaris' show, or you don't know who we are talking about when we mention Solaris, it's Solaris Blue Raven. She's fantastic. She always has great guests. And I actually had Montana, Jordan, and Nish discussing witchcraft and Samhain. Very nice. I understand, not a problem as long as you're hearing it. It's all good. Now, it only cost $5.95. I think it's $5 US per month to access the archives, where you can get not just our shows, not just Solaris' shows, but all of the hosts' shows in the archives. That means that you can listen, like I do, to an MP3 of my favorite show when I do my commute 5 days a week. Long commute, 2 hours. That's right. Anyway, look, I'm emphasizing the point of being able to grab your favorite host shows and listen to them in your own time. That's really all I'm doing. Now, poor Mecky has been... Oh, is it $6 for you? It's $5.95 for me. Well, that's the last time I looked anyway. It's an automatic debit, doesn't matter to me. It's like I spent $6 on a coffee, on a single coffee, and I have a couple of coffees a day, and then like triple shots. Maybe I should really cut down on my coffee. At least one coffee I could cut. Hey, here's an angle. If you cut one coffee out of your life per month, put it on Revolution Radio. Subscribe to the archives. That's a much better way of describing it. And look, I did it in like half a sentence. So, well, it's officially not half a sentence, of course, is it? Really, it's a whole sentence. But when Mecky arrives, he's just running a little late, but don't worry about that. I typed in... Here he goes. So I'll just add him to the call, and I typed in a movie title, and my German is actually pretty terrible. It's the only movie title that I'm aware of as a German title. I'm sure there's 100 million titles, but that's the one I know. And I was... you are not very good at the Deutsch.
Hello!
I'm not good at the Deutsch, Mecky.
No, horrible. Horrible.
Bruh, bruh.
Yeah. It's true, it's okay. We can all be good at everything.
well, that's good. That gives me 99.999. I've got 4 9s on everything else then. That's good.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's that's what you that's what you hope for anyway, right? So this is show number 397.
790 and 300, and I'm on my mobile phone.
Oh, my goodness! Actually, you know what? I have to say, you've mentioned the same thing to me before in the past when I've been on my mobile. The audio isn't so bad.
The audio, well, the thing is this: I use my phone as my access point anyway for wireless, so the connection should be pretty good, right? That's funny.
I know.
Yeah, no. My Apple machine decided to black screen me. It was flickering, and then it decided to not have a screen at all. It's still working. It's still on. Yeah, I can feel it hum. I can hear it humming away. And clearly, what Apple does is they make you take an appointment. My appointment is on Wednesday. That's not helpful at all. Apple, do better. Do better.
It's not next.
Yes.
NBD, is it?
No,
No, you'd imagine.
just do better.
Yeah. Oh, they
Just
can't
do
really because
better. That's all
they spend all their money on blue T-shirts.
And glass stairs. Okay,
Stairs.
that's what they
I've
spend.
seen the city store.
Glass. Oh,
That's why
man.
they can sell an iPhone for $1,500 each, and that
There
just
you go.
that I have heard on the internet. That at the moment they make them, they transfer them internally to an Irish company, so they can ship them, and they claim the entire lot as a loss. So every single cent that they make from the manufacturing to the shipping, they've actually claimed them as a loss, so that now that every cent they earn off the earnings they make from the sale is 100% profit, because they've already wiped out the manufacturing cost. It's look, you know what? It's a marvelous world, and that's the reason, Mecky, why last week when we were talking about what it was going to look like after a Brexit occurred, and one of those things is Ireland still going to be a tax haven? Probably, you know, it's all good. But if you were Ireland, you would say, no, actually, we're going to charge 1,000% tax for every company who's still here.
That works, right? Hey, huh? What?
Insert maniacal laughter here. Right?
No, it's yeah, the brain fart. It's all not working. It's all not good. Brexit, yeah. Look, there's a whole bunch of stuff, but you know, look, I have to laugh, Dave, and then you know, I mean, it's gotten so bad, and I said this before. We can't parody anyone anymore.
No,
it's just I mean, it's everybody is their own trope now. You know, a trope is like I guess a cutout, a cardboard cutout kind of, you know, a stereotypical thing. Yeah. So yeah, think of a trope as a stereotype, specifically in science fiction and so forth, right? But these days, everybody's a trope. I mean, you know, you've got the you've got the ISIS people, right? You get the Americans, you got the British, the Germans, the Australians. I mean, look at the Australians. Did you hear the speech that it's not possible. It is not possible. California. 2 million people will lose power. Why? Because of bushfires. 2 million people will have no. This is not an accident. They're actually gonna deliberately cut it because.
I know why, right? And it's because
they
don't want the lines arcing and causing more fires.
There you go. That's exactly right. So look, I get it.
That's all right.
But this is power. 21st century.
That's all right.
Yeah. Hey, Tesla didn't have any any cables. With Tesla energy, we'd be wireless. That's a good idea.
Yeah, wouldn't it?
That didn't happen.
But Mecky, what has changed from, you know, all those many years ago, like, I don't know, 10 years ago, let's say, right? Before the bushfires were extremely, like, not even annual. They're not even seasonal anymore. They're just, I don't know, it's every news cycle. So what happened from pre-news cycle fires, which look like directed energy weapons? I'm just going to say that, right? It could be just ember falling, but I'm not going to argue it. All I'm saying is...
You can say whatever you like, my friend. Tinfoil hats on, my friend. It's all good.
As long as I say I think in front of it, it's fine. So what happened to make these more extreme? If it's the electrical wires, well, didn't we always have them? Like the last 100 years, right? We've had electrical cables. And why weren't fires getting started all the time then?
But they're thicker now, you see. Plus there's swamp gas in the vicinity.
So they're really
Come on, Dave.
Lines, right?
Get with the program, Dave. What are you doing over here, huh?
So
what?
My thoughts were that the winds have increased in speed, and I've looked into this as well, and now we have more often in Australia. I can't call because I haven't done the research elsewhere, but I'm happy for someone else to do the research and show me what it is. We have higher velocity winds more often. And when I say higher velocity, you know, we used to have 90, 80, 90 when I was growing up. It really never peaked out much more than that. Now we have 100 km/h winds. And that's getting up. That's getting up there, right? But we have those, or reaching between 90 and 100, more often than we've ever had them. that, and now, if that is going to move the power lines around, then I think we need to adjust how we've constructed our power infrastructure, because if we don't, then we're going to see more fires even more regularly, and then that's going to lead to even more problems. So let's just cut power to 2 million people. Why not? Let's not do anything about it.
That's well. The thing is, this is really the kicker here.
I got to switch.
If they didn't, it's the easiest thing there is. But if they didn't cut the power, if they did not, if they didn't cut the power, the consequences could be much more severe, and tens of millions of people could be without power. So it's a problem that most of the nations that never had a war fought on their soil in the last 100 years are facing. What are you saying, Mickey? That sounds crazy. What it is that World War II specifically, but other wars, the Korean War, Vietnam War, and all those, they caused something that necessitated to build new infrastructure, trains, electricity grids, So Europe is in pretty good shape, right? I mean, they got issues. They're in good shape. Most of Southeast Asia is in pretty good shape from a grid perspective. America, both from a rail and from an electricity grid perspective, 200 years behind. Well, not quite 200. Oh, actually, not quite 200. Let's talk about 120 years.
All right.
120 years, roughly, right? So that's really bad, because the grid was not designed for the load it's on. And the railway gauges and the railway lines themselves aren't really up to scratch either. There aren't any bullet trains in America, are there?
No, because
why?
The development
gauge is wrong.
Of the
That's
rail,
why.
The development of the rail system throughout the US was by individual companies, and each of them chose a different rail gauge to use, and therefore there was no standardization. You can't just have a train go all the way around the country. You've got to get it on and off different trains. So I agree with you, Mickey, and we suffered the same kind of thing here, but then it all became standardized. So there's still
we're
in a little bit of
we're lucky
position because we didn't expand across the entire country with different corporations using different gauges.
Yeah, and we have we've got pretty good train networks in the cities. We've got pretty good train networks connecting at least the eastern seaboard. We've got one massive line going all the way across Australia into Perth, and then we got a couple of other ones. But that was a big one, right?
South Australia,
and
Northern Territory.
we've never had this. But we never had this population explosion. Yes, exactly. So Australia is about the same size as the continental United States, but we never had that a population explosion in the center. All our populations are pretty much concentrated around the coastlines. So whereas America, of course, is populated massively inland because nice climate and grazing country and forests and all wonderful things, whereas Australia is a desert. It's a desert. Nobody wants to live in the desert.
You don't even want to live on the other side of the ranges, where it used to not be a desert, but now there's no water there now. That's the end of that.
Yeah, it's no.
My friends live over on the other side, north of Bathurst, where that big race is once a year. And they live in a town that in December, which is 5 weeks away, is going to have zero water now. Because remember, Australia doesn't enjoy the prevalence of meltwater like California does. Imagine California without meltwater water. There'd be nothing, right? Back to desert we go. So
look,
it's a tragedy. Meki, it's all yours, buddy.
No. Look, it is so bad right now. Okay, on so many fronts, that if you didn't laugh or try to make jokes, you just lock yourself up in a room and just cry all day long. There's so many things that are going wrong. There's so many things. Interestingly enough,
can I go
the speech that you can go cooking. That's fine. That's fine. It makes no difference to the outcome. The speech that Joe Hockey gave, because he's leaving his ambassadorship in the States.
In New York, wasn't it?
He said. Yeah, he was sort of saying that America is now seriously endangering free trade and the free market economy, and they should stop already with China. He said, and isolationist. And you know what? Another thing he said. This most people have just glossed this over. He said these kinds of isolationist policies usually precede war.
Yeah.
That's what he said.
Wait. We've said that for a while, right? Ourselves.
I know.
Yeah.
It's a thing.
Out of the mouths of babes,
to hear it out of Joe Hockey's mouth is quite another thing, though, because we can say whatever.
1.2, wasn't he?
Correct. Yeah, he was second in line for the prime ministership. But look, that's a thing, and the truth is, isolationism is a possible precursor to war. Not necessarily. I don't think Trump necessarily thinks that far ahead. He may, but a war of that scale would be catastrophic. And like Einstein said, he was asked, what kind of weapons do you think they were using in World War III? Because, atomic age, there was a lot of fear, nuclear weapons and all that. And Einstein said, well, I'm not sure. But I can tell you, World War IV, it's going to be fought sticks and stones. That's right. So, yeah, well, what does that mean, Mackie? What it means is we're going to be thrown back into the Stone Age. That's what they tried to do to Afghanistan, to bomb it back in the Stone Age, remember?
Yeah.
And then they decided, hey, it's no good to bomb Afghanistan. No good targets. No good targets in Afghanistan. Let's bomb Iraq. But they haven't done anything. Find something. What are you doing? What am I paying you for? Find something. Jeez.
Find something.
Come on.
We have an ice cream truck that was overpriced. Yeah, okay, that'll do.
There you go. Weapons of mass deception.
Mass deception. That's actually what it was. Mackie, I've got a funny story, a funny one. You'll like this. And this was about a Chinese businessman, Tan Hui, who was looking for a hitman to take out a competitor. Now, the competitor,
go on.
The competitor was Wei Mao, and it's in China, and he was willing to pay 2 million yuan, which is let's just call it 218,000 pounds, to get the job done. However, what was really funny, a funny thing happened on the way to the hit, right? So, the hitman that Mr. Huey hired decided to offer the job to another hitman for half of the original price. Then the second hitman then subcontracted to another hitman, who then subcontracted to a fourth, who gave the job to a fifth hitman. Right? This is where it gets funny. However, hitman's number 5 was so incensed at how much the value of the contract had fallen that he told the target to fake his own death, which eventually led the police to finding out about the plot, and every one of those persons got jailed. Right? So it became a race to the bottom, and it's all margin on margin. Crazy.
That's the world we live in, my friend.
I expected there to be honest, I expected there to be, a line entry in Tasker.
Though, the thing is, remember how I said earlier, there's nothing left to parody?
Yeah.
There really isn't.
There isn't.
The world is so insane. It is so crazy that you just look around and you go, if I were a stand-up comedian, I'd be going, I don't know, I got nothing. I got nothing better than this. I'd just be talking about life. I'd be reading the newspaper as my act. That's what I would be doing. Okay, what we got today here, eh? Oh, the entire newspaper's blacked out. That's what
redacted.
Yeah, the entire newspaper, the front page in Australia, the Herald, as well as the what was the other one? The Daily Telegraph, I think.
Right, that's right.
They both agreed to redact their front page significantly in order to protest against some of the, attacks on press freedom occurred recently.
That was what it was, yeah.
And because there's no press freedom enshrined in any Australian law anyway. It doesn't exist.
Nope, not at all. And the amount
it's just a convention.
The amount of federal police officers that raid journalists' homes, and now can not even sequester. You could just look it up. If you have a query, you can look up who they contacted, when it was, and they can work out the paper trail to like the phone trail or the text trail or the not Instagram, whatever it was, right? Any of the social media platforms, they've got access to all of that, and they can pinpoint the very moment that person talked to that other person. Then they've got everyone involved, and they just go after them. I mean, but for what? Remember, Meki, do you remember whistleblowing was okay at some point in the past?
Oh, no, it was not just okay. It was expected. It was the civil duty, right?
And there was this thing called whistleblower protection, and the boards of companies would write into the policies of those companies that if something's going on, we need to know about it. So if you want to speak up against, some wrongdoing in the business, hey, we're your first port of call, right? And you're not gonna get fired if you have some legitimate case.
Yep.
That's gone. There isn't anything now. It doesn't matter who you are, where you are. You can go to jail for whistleblowing now. What? What happened?
So this is really, it's a really big problem. Now, back in the olden days, that was normal. I mean, Majesté Laissez, that was like if you somehow offended a king or the queen or whatever, they could chop your head off. Thailand is still the same way. If you say anything at all, well, they go to jail for decades, right? That's what happens. You can't say anything against the Thai king. And the Thai king is a bit out there. I may travel to Thailand in the future, so I'm not going to say anything bad about the dude. But, right?
Oh, but if you were to run, and in some countries, Meki, is it the Philippines? If you were to run against the current incumbent leader, that you could just find yourself in jail for some reason.
You could find yourself very,
around about voting time. So that you're invalid.
Yeah, he had a really bad cold. He died of the cold in his bed. And what about those 52 bullet wounds? Now they're unrelated. No, that's just
totally unrelated.
Just a cold. But the thing is this: we are moving into an autocratic kind of regime.
Oh, yeah.
For the longest time, we've lived in a world where there was no freedom of any. There's no freedom of speech. That's like a crazy thing, right? It all started sort of with the Renaissance. I mean, I guess in ancient Greece, people could say what they wanted. In Rome, more or less as well, it didn't matter. They kill you if they didn't like you too much. But in modern times, for the last 200 years, and this is they've been hand in hand with the French as well as the American revolutions. We have enjoyed an individual level of freedom that we hadn't known before. What we're seeing now, and be aware of this. It started. Well, probably after World War II, very much 50s and 60s, but it really picked up speed, momentum after 9/11. I know, well, whatever. I'm going to say it, 9/11. 10, 12, whatever. And right. But the problem here is that we've seen, Patriot Acts, Office of Homeland Security, not just in America, but elsewhere in the world. This precedent was used to curtail the freedoms of the population, of any population, right? And it's to the point where you can go to countries which were formerly considered fairly autocratic, and you probably have a better chance of speaking your mind than you did before. And in fact, China, for all the trouble that's happening in Hong Kong, and it's a complex. I won't go into this very complex situation, but in China, you're more protected to say what you need to say than you are in other parts of the world which were formerly considered free. It is really very strange. This is what we're seeing here. This is a deliberate attack on our individual rights to assemble, Dave, to protest, to whistleblow, as it were. Yeah. Because I mean, who's the whistle being blown on? On the people in power, on people that can wield this kind of power. Okay. Thanks, Ben, who is 00. By the way, the chat room is really active today. Thank you very much for that. And the curtail is quite. I like that too. It's a good word. Yeah. But the point is that we're seeing this rise of a new autocratic wave. Yeah, not just in Australia, not just in America. It's happening all over the place. I mean, in some countries it's already there, so nobody question. I mean, you could even. I think Singapore affords you more personal freedom than some parts in the States. It's really. Yeah. It is extraordinary. It's astounding to see this level of. I mean, what are you meant to do? I mean, Bernstein and Woodward. Remember those guys?
No.
Watergate. All right.
Yeah,
so
yes.
they they were quite the heroes in their day. You know, they uncovered the Watergate. I mean, it was, at the end of the day, it was about, you know, Nixon spying on the Democrats. I think, you know, I mean, in the scheme of things, not really that horrible, but it was a big scandal. You know, almost cost Nixon his presidency. But the point is that they were whistleblowers of the highest order, and they're celebrated as you know, groundbreaking investigative journalists. These days, you see what happens to the whistleblowers. Assange did not hack a single thing.
No,
he didn't. Right?
He is a publisher.
And you could argue that, you know, if you wanted to, that he incited people to hack. There's no evidence for that, but you could say it if you wanted to. But there's no evidence at all for him doing it himself, and there's also no evidence for him inciting anyone. He was given material, right, to publish. Like, just like I guess to some extent Woodward and Bernstein, but the point here is he's not a traditional journalist, right? He's an internet journalist or editor or publisher, if you will, and what he revealed was so much more damaging. But nobody's talking about that anymore. Nobody's talking about the stuff that was put out into the world. They're only talking about, oh, he raped a girl in Denmark, and he jumped bail in Britain. He should be extradited to the States, and this and that and that other, and he's an Australian citizen to boot. So and I haven't seen it. Australia's done nothing.
Where's our government in all of this, right?
Yeah, so, where is it? It's nowhere.
Yeah, it's not even a prisoner exchange, which happens all the time. You'd be surprised how often that happens. So, Meki, one of those things that I wanted to say, that you said freedom to assemble. Well, yeah, you're free to assemble as long as you have a permit in Australia.
Yeah, that's it.
You're required to obtain a permit to be able to assemble. I was trying to tell someone the other day that this is the case, and they're going, "Oh, no, you see, you just organise a protest and get out there," and no, you can't. If they say no and you do it, you can go to jail.
100%.
And they go, when have they ever denied a protest? Well, I said there's been a number of examples, but the one that would come to mind immediately was two groups that had paths that intersected each other, and that their opinions weren't on the same team, and that what they might have done is, you know, incited some kind of violent act because they were, you know, hugely aggressive against each other in the way that they thought, not because of action. So it's just sad. It's sad that we're in this. Now, I remember some audio clips, Meki, from World War II saying that you're not to assemble. There shouldn't be congregations of people, and that's from a safety perspective, right? Not trying to lose too many people at once, right? They're not trying to keep the safe, is my point. They're trying to control the voice. And just like with Assange,
they keep themselves safe.
Yeah, they're keeping themselves safe, right? So, but with Assange, they're trying to keep the message low, and the attack high. So the attack on his personal, you know, his person, rather than the actual information that was brought forward. And I watched a 2.5 hour interview with Snowden, for instance. He was talking about his book. And he was able to release the book, but he's not allowed to make any money off it because of the court case. So the publishers are being very careful. So, but what he published in that book, which you can buy, you can still buy it, and he's being able to sell it under the Freedom of Speech Act. Now that doesn't happen here, right? If you're guilty of something, that you're not allowed to make any money off it, and you can't publish a book. The book is retracted from sale. So I think he's in an okay position. But you know what? If you put a vote to all the people, like a referendum, an example in the US for Snowden, I think they'd let him go. I'd say that they bring him back. Don't worry about it. You know what he did was for the best of everyone, and no one protested against the stuff that he brought out. No one. Hey, you tell us, Quimby. Right? You can surveil all you like. You can break all the rules, do whatever the hell you want. It doesn't matter. Just maybe. I don't know. As long as we're not doing anything wrong, right? But everyone's doing something wrong.
we're too apathetic now, and I mean, that's
Who
most
cares?
of us. And it's down to a number of things: infotainment, diet, education, if you can call it that, and then the infotainment. It's really the infotainment that has dulled our senses, has reduced our attention span, and it's worse with devices now. Back in the day, people would read the newspaper or books on the train, so they always have the head somewhere. People don't like to get bored. And they say, oh, it's the same today. No, it's not the same today. What you're exposing yourself to is a frequency rate that your eyes is not naturally used to. Right? So the frequency rate that your screen shoots at you, if you will, also the color schemes in this, that's why you get a blue light filter and all that, is actually not good for you. If you use your mobile phone or a tablet or whatever just before you sleep, you cannot sleep. It actually will break your sleep cycles. So it's not like this. It's not like reading a book or a newspaper on the train. It's much, much, much worse. And your children, when they're young, under 5, under 6, under 10, maybe, but it's hard these days. You should restrict their screen time because it's not good for their brain development. But there's one other thing I wanted to quickly tell you, Dave. It just came to me. If the whistleblowing or the potential or damage that you could cause is medium, they will, exile you, put you in jail, tell everybody that you're some kind of deviant or whatever it is, right? And that'll take care of itself, more or less, like with, Assange, Snowden, those guys. However, if you, and you could be one of the guys perpetrating it, have so much information, and so many people are connected to you if you're on trial, right, that everything comes out, then you're going to be exited stage left, right? And then we've seen this recently with a very prominent figure. And because if that case had gone, and you all know what I'm talking about, I want to say it, but if that case had gone, if that case had gone to trial, the criminal case, I'm talking about the criminal case.
That's right.
If the criminal, there would have been subpoenas, there would have been people coming to all kinds of things. All the people that had gone to the island, all the people on the planes, they would have all had, have to give depositions under oath and all that wonderful stuff.
Well, what's the cross-examinations of those people? Imagine those, right?
And then, right, boom, a whole different thing. What is happening now, though, we've got a civil case, and in the civil case, it's only about the cash. That's right. How much cash can the victims extract from the estate? That's really what that is. Criminal case gone, but the criminal case could only go if the subject of the criminal case were no longer around. Right? That was the only way for the criminal case not to proceed, by removing the main defendant.
So Meki,
the only
defendant, really. And removing him, I don't think. I have to say, I'm not 50-50 on this. I'm leaning further towards the belief that he wasn't actually taken out. He was just removed. Because that's their protection, right?
100%.
All of those people, that whole echelon of society. Imagine, it would be worse than the French Revolution. Imagine the lynchings that would happen. I reckon that would have been really high.
See, the thing is the population really ready for something like that?
No.
Other people, other people the same kind of, look, you know what, I've said this before and I will say it again. If you protest something, if you're going to be in your bonnet and something bothers you, go out there and stay protesting. Don't go for an afternoon. A show of force, that's wonderful, but then it's out of your system. Politicians know that, and off they go with their agenda. If you are serious, you do what the Hong Kong people are doing. If you're serious, you stay protesting. You keep on going. I don't even know what they want to do now. I don't even know, because they've achieved the initial outcome, which was to repeal the extradition laws. That's done. The second outcome, I thought, was free elections. I don't think that's ever going to happen, but it's possible. I think they also wanted Caroline Lamb to resign. But dude, you got to stay protesting, Dave. If you don't, then you're not that interested.
The voice got silent, and look, we were just about to sign it, and then you stopped protesting. Let's just put that in the bin now. Don't care.
There you go.
24-hour news cycle, Meki. What was that we were talking about? I forget. Right.
Yes.
So there was another story here, and this one we're going. Benu00 likes the words we're using tonight, and thank you very much. I don't know who you are, but thank you very much. Curtail. I thought pervasive was going to get there, but it didn't make a mention. Echelon did. All right, that's all right. So there was another news story. And this we're going, I think, to see. We're going to see the outcome of this very shortly, probably within the next 24 hours, because I don't know what it actually means, and I'll read it to you.
Go on.
Trump tweeted Saturday night that something very big has just happened. Now, let's for a moment just remove from that statement the likely place he does all his tweets from. The toilet. Right? So let's
throne.
The throne, very much so. So let's just remove that part of it, because I don't think he was surprised with his result at that point. I think this might be something to do with either Pelosi or something coming out, because it was a parallel story at almost exactly the same time. Pervasive. That's very funny. According to the president, he says, "I can't believe that Nancy Pelosi's district in San Francisco is in such horrible shape that the city itself is in violation of many sanitary and environmental orders, causing it," he didn't write this, "causing it to owe the federal government billions of dollars. And all she works on is impeachment. We should all work together to clean up these hazardous waste and homeless sites before the whole city rots away." There's far too many words in his sentences for it to be him. "Very bad and dangerous conditions, also severely impacting Pacific Ocean and water supply. Pelosi must work on this mess to turn her district around." Apparently, that's a quote from Trump. So, were they connected? I'm not quite sure. But from what I understand, there was some Giuliani application. It could be fake news. I don't know. So we'll wait and see. But Trump's tweet is real. I checked it out myself. Something very big has just happened. So goodness knows what that is.
So what could that be?
I don't know. It could be anything.
Well, it could be anything. But he's not one to keep a secret, you know. He can't help himself.
No. Remember that? I remember during his election campaign, he said, "I'm never going to advertise my intention for a conflict or moves of the game during the conflict," right?
Correct.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I remember that. That was awesome. Wow, and I went, power to you, buddy. Good on you. And then the press were all a bit, hesitant about it, and then suddenly he just goes, "We're going to bomb Syria." Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do that. Why not?
Yeah, that's right. For
They
some reason.
need some bomb. They need some good bombing. They need some good bombing happening to them. That's what they need.
Yeah, carpet bombing. There was the other thing. The other thing I read this week was carpet bombing from 5G satellites. But the problem with 5G is it doesn't transmit that far. So I don't know how 5G satellites are going to work unless you're on planes, right, at 20,000 feet, flying closer to them. Maybe you get some signal. I don't know. It does my head in that people, because they're talking about towers, 250 meters apart, to be able to use your mobile service on the ground. So how are they going to, they can't fly a satellite 250 meters above your head because it's just going to careen out of control or run out of fuel or something, right? Or unless you're a flat earther, then it's perfectly fine up there in the firmament. Oh, it hurts.
You know what would be funny? Do you know what would be funny?
What?
If the Earth was flat, I'd be laughing. It'd be so fun. The thing is this, though. There was this. I have to share this.
All right.
On the Flat Earth page, Flat Earth Society page, this is what it said: more than 50,000 members around the globe.
That's right.
On the Flat Earth Society homepage.
Yeah.
What? No. 50,000 members on the plane. That is the Earth.
On the plane, it should have said.
Not on the. Just a figure of speech. No, a globe is round. It's a ball, you morons. I'm sorry.
It's the exact opposite. It's the exact opposite of what you're trying to convince everybody of the case. Mekki, if if I'm standing in the middle of the desert in Australia, because we know it's reasonably flat, but it still suffers from the curvature of the Earth, right? Right.
Pretty flat, yeah.
But yeah, it's reasonably flat. If I'm standing there, I should be able to quite comfortably point out there's Mount Everest over there. I can see, I can see the building in Dubai. So that's pretty tall. How do they compare against each other, right? Because my viewpoint would be on a flat plane. It doesn't happen. So you'd be able to see every plane in the air.
Yep.
But my favorite is the twin counter-rotating poles. We would only have one pole if the Earth was flat. There'd only be one pole, and it would only
the other pole is an ice wall. Yeah.
Well, but you can't have a pole at the ice wall because it's just the outer edge of a central pole. So when we look south, we see a pole rotate, right? And when we look north, we see the north pole, the pole of the center of our rotation, turn in the opposite direction. Which means if it was truly a flat Earth, that shouldn't happen. But since it is a globe, but if it was flat, we'd look up and we'd see all the stars moving in a center, like a stream, in front of us with counter-rotating poles in the same sky. Doesn't happen. Sorry, all you flat Earthers. Good luck with that. So, if you can make a model of that and why it doesn't work, I'll start listening again. But I would be truly amazed as you would, Meki. We could sit there drinking champagne on the flat Earth, amazed that we never saw it before. If it were
I want to dangle my feet. I want to dangle my feet over the edge is what I want. Right.
Wouldn't that be
there's wouldn't that be awesome? There's one other story. I don't know if you mentioned it before I came on board, which is the quantum computer story.
Oh, the Google one.
So it appears that Google, and I want to give you guys some details here, right? It appears that Google has succeeded in creating a functioning quantum computer. Now, what does that mean? Quantum, Yeah. So as you say, or as you know, maybe that traditional computers are based on binary actions, binary calculations. So 0, 0, 1, on off. These are switches. So you get millions and millions of switches inside the microchip, right? That's really how it works. On off. Quantum is fundamentally different. You're trying to get qubits to work together, right? A qubit is a special particle, right? And they are they are in a superposition state, right? And that's really the key to quantum computers' advantage over classical computers, right? For example, right, a pair of bits can store one of 4 possible combinations:
Bingo.
0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, or 1, 1.
That's
correct?
Right.
Now a pair of qubits, now these are the quantum computing bits, can store all 4 combinations simultaneously because each qubit represents both values, 0 and 1, at the same time. Right? Superpositioning. Remember, in a superposition state, everything is possible.
Hold on, right?
No, it's true. So if you add more qubits, your computer's powers will grow exponentially. 3 qubits store 8 combinations, 4 qubits 16, Right now, it appears that Google's computer has 53 qubits that can store 253 values. More than, right? That's more than 10 quadrillion combinations. That's okay, right. 53 qubits equal to 10 quadrillion combinations. Now, anyway, it gets more complicated. I won't talk about it anymore.
Provide the example, Meki, of the processing time for the equation they set up and what the equivalent would be in traditional computing.
Yeah, so what they claim, right? They created a true random set of numbers, a truly random set of numbers is what they said they claimed, and they did it in a couple of minutes. That's what they said, right? Yeah. And they said this couple of minutes in a quantum computer that they achieved would have taken 10,000 years on a regular computer. No, regular computers are pretty good. Like they do math a lot better than I can, and a lot faster too. Having said that, it is being disputed by IBM and a couple others, right? Because IBM obviously is in the race as well. So the jury is still out on yeah, correct. But we're still waiting for verification. Now the problem with quantum computers has always been this. So the quantum states only work at the very, very small, right? As soon as the nano tiny world infringes upon the macro world, the quantum effects lead away. Yeah, they are washed away by the macro world. So to entangle 53 qubits. So this is, I'm going to quickly tell you what they've done here. Google's quantum computer consists of macroscopic circuits of superconducting metal that entangle 53 qubits in a complex superposition state. The entangled qubits generate a random number between 0 and 253, like we said, but due to quantum interference, some random numbers show up more than others. When the computer measures these random numbers millions of times, a pattern arises from their uneven distribution. Now, the problem, though, is the more qubits that you sort of link together in this way, the more you are coming into the macro world. So I find it astounding that they actually managed to do 53 qubits. And I really wonder, Dave, what the upper limit here is for entangled qubits, because the bigger this set of qubits gets, the more it lives in the classical physical world, right? And all of a sudden, all the quantum effects would peel away.
Okay, but only if you watch them. So this is the thing. I watched an entire, 2-hour documentary on this, on their quantum, on the building of and the computation comparisons. One of the things that got me on this is, like 253 is nice, right? It could be 256. That would have made better math a bit later on. but because then the math would have matched the math of the conventional computer. But setting up a task for it to obtain an answer is one thing for this example, and that's what IBM and whoever, and Cray maybe even, are complaining about. Maybe it needs, an impartial judge. The thing is, they don't know what they can do with it yet. But I think, Meki, there's only, if you're a fan of sci-fi, there's only one thing that they could ask it, right? What's the meaning of life, the universe, and everything?
42.
42.
What's the question?
You're not. So if you come up with the answer, millions of years in the future, but you're not going to like it. Go on, tell me. 42. Right?
You're not gonna. No, you're really not gonna like it. No, come on. No. You really will not like it.
Really not going to like
okay.
that I've come
but I want you.
There was a problem with the question. So this is the problem. So they're not sure how to be able to utilize it yet. They've made something, and it's an interesting machine. It's you could hide it within a cylinder. In fact, they do. They liquid cool it, and they almost freeze it. And it's got it's very physical looking, right? It's in the real scale, human scale size, and it's an amazing looking thing. But they're still perplexed themselves. There's a Googleplex, but they're perplexed of how they might be able to utilize such a machine. So they've made a machine that can do the calculation, but they haven't been able to create a question to ask it yet. And I thought Douglas Adams would have been right on it.
Yeah, I know, right? The funny thing is this, though, you're right. We're looking, but the thing is this, and I listened to a lot of commentary and analyses. Because I'm a radio guy, right? Mm-hmm. And the overwhelming consensus was that nobody would pour billions, and I mean billions and billions of dollars into this research if they didn't think there would be something really cool at the end of it. So it's IBM, it's Google that we know of. I guarantee you Amazon on the race, Huawei would be in the race, Alibaba maybe, all the major MIT, all the major labs around the world that can afford this kind of thing, governments as well, are in this race. And now this is just the official story to keep us happy. Does this already exist, this capability? The answer is yes, it does. Do we have a whole bunch of tech that we don't know about? Yes, we do. Yeah. Yes, we do. How do I know this? Because I'm a thinking man. Dave is a thinking man. We're never told the entire truth. Never have been told the entire truth about anything ever.
Well,
not ever. And secrets, I love it. Secrets are being kept. And no, if you don't believe me, read Hunt for 0 Point.
Yes.
An excellent book. Read it. Written by Cook, I think, Nick Cook, if I'm not mistaken.
Snowden talked about that book too, in his interview.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
it's seminal work. It is critical for all of you out there listening to read. It's a little dry, it's a little technical, but I tell you what, if you stick with it, it's full of Easter eggs, and at the end you get a really nice chewy center. You're going, oh wow,
Ooh.
what just happened? Because this guy he worked for Jane's Defense Weekly, a very serious, I guess, military like or attached magazine in the in the UK. Only attracts obviously very serious people, and he didn't want to follow the story initially, Dave. You know how we always talk to our interview guests and ask them, well, hey, what's happening? How did you get here? And we could ask him the same question. It would be that story that landed on his desk, and he goes, yeah, it's not really interesting. It's just hocus pocus. But then maybe it was still summer, whatever. He started following the story, and what he found was simply astounding. The skunk works and how far advanced we all are. The 0 point energy, meaning 0 point energy really refers to energy that is both free and limitless.
Yeah, it seemingly
Imagine
comes out
that.
of thin air. That's right.
Seemingly, right? Now, all the other, like Tesla actually spoke about that as well, right? The geniuses of the world have spoken about these energy fields. And I believe, Dave, very, very firmly, that once we get into 0 point energy, we're actually tapping into the quantum foam. Oh, Mackie, what's quantum foam? In my opinion, again, only my opinion, and if you disagree, that's all good. The quantum foam is what underlies this reality matrix. Okay, it is the smallest possible building blocks out of which this is all built, of course, which means that it also stores all of the energy that we have at our disposal, and possibly more than we could ever imagine, because it is the substance, if you want to call it that, the final matrix which underlies our little reality over here, our little multiverse, even, if you will.
So Mackie,
quantum.
You know who knows all about this, right? Project
People.
Dolphin. No, Project Dolphin.
Oh yes.
Right.
Yes.
Planck was in that with
Yep.
all of my favorite physicists, scientists, and researchers at the time. Every last one of them. They knew what was going on, and everything that's been made since, it's all about that. Mackie, one last thing right before the music starts, because I know the music can start in a second, and that's that the LHC, China has decided to make an even bigger one, like 10, 20 times bigger, 30 times bigger than the one that is there.
Yeah.
Why? It's like you and me making a map app right now to compete against Google. Why? It's not going to give us that. It's not going to do anything for anyone. There must be something even bigger. There must be something to do with the LHC that isn't just smashing stuff together. And apparently,
correct. I reckon that's.
There's got to be something in it.
Yep.
So it's just checking.
It's a
There's the music.
Music?
Well, yeah, we'll see you on the
Don't
other
go
side
away.
of
Come
this
back.
short break.
Reincarnation.
call-in listeners or chatters are solely the.
Oh, I don't know where Mackie is. That's okay. You're back with Dave and Mackie's Shiny Side Out. Yeah, I've done it right. Shiny Side Out on freedomslips.com on the #1 listener-supported talk radio on the net. So push the donate button or subscribe to the archives for only $5 US a month. If you're new to Shiny Side Out, well, welcome aboard. This is a tinfoil hat zone, so keep your arms within the vehicle, turn off your personal reality inverters, and please, no flash photography. We're glad you're on board, and thank you for inviting us into your lives, so follow, subscribe, or otherwise for the appropriate social media platforms. We are halfway through show number, and let me get the title page up, 397.
790 and 300.
Absolutely true. Get yourself some great merchandise from the station's website. And, Mackie, there was something that I had to read out. Hang on a second. Now, attention, for a limited time only, we have a special offer. For a $10 donation to the station will send you a PDF of a new book named Ether by A Mad Painter, which contains short stories of AIs, friends and love, just put book and your email address in the comments section on PayPal. All right? All you need to do. The special offer is effective until midnight on Thursday, the 31st of October. So it ends at the end of October. Alrighty, everyone, you listen. And if you're listening to this after the end of October, don't bother putting that stuff in. It won't happen for you. But there are so many other things that you can get from the station's website. So I do ask you to investigate for yourself. We're all researchers, investigative journalists. So get in there, and maybe you can get an EMP-proof thumb drive or survival documents with it on it. You can have there's seed packs as well that can last in your freezer for a very, very long time. So that's really good to get yourself into. Just follow the instructions when you donate. That's it. Mackie, the one thing I didn't say at the top of the show was we acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Darkinjung people, well, Darkinjung, where I live, and Mackie, where you live, it's the
work people.
And we pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. And let us remember that beneath our houses, well, all our civilization stuff that we think is so amazing, there are lands that didn't have that and had stories passed down for at least 240,000 generations. Very important messages there, people, and discover who they are in your neck of the woods.
Very important. Very important. Now, which brings us, excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat. That brings us to, it might even be the last show, potentially, definitely only one more of the reincarnation cycle. And today, or to cap it off in many ways, we wanted to, exactly, we wanted to, slapdick, no, that's the best. We like slapdicks. No, it's an inside joke. Don't laugh at that. It makes no sense at all. And hey, SJ, hope you're doing good there. Look, the key thing here is that reincarnation is very difficult to swallow for a lot of people because you can't empirically measure it. There's no science that really we have developed yet that can give us a straight answer. All we can do is gather data, research, right? Excuse me. And essentially, that's what's been happening. Right, we've shared that with you over the last few shows, and a lot of people that have done a lot of really, really good research. The research is ongoing. Last time we also showed you or told you how you can get in touch with people that are conducting the research, right, and giving you some pointers. If you have a child maybe that displays some of the symptoms, I want to call it, but it's not really symptoms, more like behaviors maybe. So what we want to bring you now is a story of someone who set out to disprove the reincarnation, a skeptic, as it were. And that goes right back to the 1960s. Dr. Helen Wambach, if she was American, set out to prove how foolish the whole idea of reincarnation truly was by conducting. I'm conducting the concert. By conducting. Yes, that's the one. By conducting a scientific investigation of her own in the 1960s, right? Dr. Wambach questions 1,088, so almost 1,100, white middle-class subjects from California while they were under hypnosis. Now, just on that very quickly, this is by no means in anyone's book a representative sample of the human race, but that's okay, because Freud only worked on, Freud largely worked on neurotic, middle-aged Viennese Jewish women. So, who are we to doubt that this is a good sample group? Anyway, the subjects were asked to regress to former life. If this was successful, they were told to remember everything when they awoke from their hypnotic state. Not satisfied to just ask who they were or when they lived, Dr. Wambach also made them describe their status, gender, race, clothing, footwear, utensils, tools they used, their money, housing, and even the food they ate. The subjects frequently reported viewing the former lives much like watching a movie. They said they could experience whatever the individual experienced in that particular time. They heard ancient languages, but did not understand them. The full details of their experiences were recorded both during and after the sessions. Never before had past life inquiries been that specific or involved such a large population. The results of her 10 years of research surprised everyone. Now, again, remember, she set out to disprove it, and she really must have wanted to disprove it to devote 10 years of her life to it, right? She was not a fan.
At the end of the first year, she goes, surely I can keep, I can do this, right? I got this.
Yeah,
Next
10 years I need.
Yeah.
Nah, let's
I'm
keep
find
going
one,
until I
promise.
can disprove.
There'll be one.
I know, right? That's the thing. So 10 years, okay? 10 years of research, which is very impressive if you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
When was the last time any of you, and maybe Dave and I as well, devoted 10 years to anything in a very singular fashion, right? This is her life.
Well,
now, the detailed reports... I know, right? But you have a family, you have a job, you know. But you're right, though. You're right. 2 years, and we've got 10 years. Yeah. Hey, by the way, we're on 8 years, almost 400 shows, everybody. That's right. Now, however, let's get back to the Dr. Wombeck.
Yeah.
The detailed reports were thoroughly investigated to see if they corresponded with historical facts. In all but 11 cases, which is less than 1%, the descriptions were totally accurate. Some of the results are as follows. 50.6% of the past lives reported were male and 49.4% were female. This is exactly in accordance with biological fact. That's about how the genders are split up globally, roughly, right? Mm-hmm. The reported class or status was exactly the same proportion as the estimates of historians of the specific period of the former life. In general, this was approximately 10% upper class, 20 to 35% from the middle class, and the remaining 55 to 70% from the lower class. Although the proportion of middle class was higher around 1000 BC, the proportion later dropped and increased again after 1700. The recall by subjects of clothing, footwear, type of food, and utensils used was better than in popular history books. She found over and over again that her subjects knew better than most historians. When she went to obscure experts, her subjects were invariably correct. A subject who lived around 1000 BC in Egypt described different types of clothing worn by the upper and lower classes. The upper classes wore either a half-length or full-length white cotton robe. The lower classes wore something like an exotic-looking type of pants that was wrapped downwards from the waist.
The researchers viewed historic records of clothing worn during the respective periods, and could therefore compare it to the descriptions of these subjects. Pardon me. We both got a frog. Maybe it's the weather. The descriptions were found to be correct. Point. Between 60 and 77% of the ancient population lived at or below the poverty level. They wore homemade clothes and lived in simple, even primitive abodes. The majority were farmers who labored every day in the fields. None of the hypnotized individuals recalled being a famous historical figure. Those who recalled a high social position seemed highly dissatisfied with their lives, as if it was a burden to be alive. Those who recalled being a farmer or a member of a primitive tribe appeared to be content. Another point. Their recollections were from different geographic areas and races during their prior life. Dr. Wombeck divided them into several categories: Caucasians, Asians, Indians, blacks, and Middle Eastern descent. Another point. Around 2000 BC, only 20% of the subjects reported that they were Caucasians. They lived widely dispersed throughout what is known as the Middle East, the Mediterranean, Europe, and Central Asia. We're talking about Kazakhstan, all the stands. It's called the Central Steppe during historical times. Another point, 5 subjects stated that they lived in Central Asia between 1 and 2000 BC. They recalled living in tents, which was common to the migrating population of that region. Amazingly, they found themselves to have white skin color and yellow or golden hair. At first, this didn't appear to be historically accurate, as Asian people should have black hair and darker skin. However, recent discoveries of mummified corpses along the ancient spice route have shown that they were indeed light-skinned and blonde-haired people. Another point, eating habits of people who lived around 500 BC were not that bad. 20% of the subjects recalled that they ate poultry and sheep meat. However, between AD 25 to 1200, people's eating habits were rather poor. The subjects recalled that the food was tasteless. One young man said, "I will never badmouth McDonald's food," as a result of seeing and living in those times and recalling it. It is not surprising that those who recalled the best tasting food were those who remembered a prior life in China. The last point in this string of points, among all the subjects, 62% died of old age and illness, 18% died violently during war or some other man-made catastrophe, and the remaining 20% died in accidents. Many of the prior lives ended during the two world wars, as well as civil wars in Asian countries. Thus, these people reincarnated shortly after they died. We will see more evidence for this in our next striking example. Meki.
Surprisingly, Dr. Wambach found that 69% of the subjects who had died during the 1850s were Caucasians, while between 1900 and 1945, only 40% were Caucasian. It seems that transmigration of the different races increased after 1945. This is still not understood. So, just to be clear here, she set out to disprove reincarnation, okay? Dr. Wambach went on to publish her findings in a book called Reliving Past Lives, The Evidence Under Hypnosis, that's one book, and Life Before Life, published in 1984. Although she began her work as a skeptic, she would later write the following, and I'm quoting here. Fantasy and genetic memory could not account for the patterns that emerged in the results. With the exception of 11 subjects, all descriptions of clothing, footwear, and utensils were consistent with historical records. I want to quickly pause on the 11 subjects. So I've long contended, Dave, that a small subset of the population does shift between realities. Okay, when you've got such an overwhelming success with recall, like 1,100 people, and only 11 of those fail to recall correctly, it makes you wonder if they failed to recall correctly, or if they in fact recalled exactly what they experienced, only in a different reference frame.
Yes, of course.
Just putting it out there. Not saying that's what it is. But I do believe that these cases of slippage between, let's call it dimensions for want of a better word, happen. They don't happen very often, but when they do happen, they could be quite spectacular. And usually these days, go on.
The other thing is, why would they only have come from Earth?
Bingo. Look, there's that as well, right? This is interesting. This is very interesting. In fact, if I were to conduct a study, and I know we're just spitballing here now at the moment, but I would go to a time, or try to go to a time, when the pyramids were built, when the Sphinx was meant to have been carved out. So if you talk to somebody from, 7,000, 8,000 years ago, and goes, yeah, the Sphinx is here. It's already here. 12,000 years ago, no, the Sphinx is here. It's got a lion's head, though. That's the thing, right?
Exactly.
And those would be the questions. And, I know people stay away from these questions because they're controversial. Let's find contemporaries of Jesus, of Buddha. Why not? If this is a window into the past, and this is the closest we've come to time travel ever, let's explore it. But do you understand that this is the closest we've come to time travel, everybody out there? This is the closest. If it is that accurate, and again, less than 1% inaccurate, right?
That's right. And I'd be happy to go with, I'd accept less than 1% inaccuracy in order to learn more about it.
Yeah. In any an experiment, right? You do statistics. I used to do statistics at uni because I studied psych and economics and all that wonderful stuff. But the point is, everything, most things exist under a bell curve. It's like a normal distribution, it's called, right? 68% of any given population is within 2 standard deviations. Sorry, but I have to get technical here, right? So within 2 standard deviations. That's why you've got like IQ scores are right out there and right down there as well. So really low, really high. It's less than 1% normally of the population. It gets the really high and low ones. And there's skewed populations as well, of course. But for what it's worth, the bell curve has proven extremely useful. To have an outcome like this is almost unheard of because the outliers are just so like 1%. That's statistically speaking. Yeah. No, statistically speaking, this is a highly significant outcome. Okay, if you want to, I like the way what you
statistically accurate.
Yeah, 100%. Because Jim Tucker and Stevenson, they focused on the experience and of the individual, right? And didn't really care too much about the circumstances or the clothing or whatever. I like her approach, Dr. Wambach's approach. She went there to disprove it, but unwittingly proved it, I guess, in a way, right? And we should use this. And you know what? If she did it in the 60s, right, I guarantee you there are people being regressed by various governments around the world to find out more about the past.
That's right.
100%. And why not? And this is, again, tinfoil hats on, everybody.
It's the Ark of the Covenant, Mackie.
Why can't you regress people to the future?
That's right.
Why can't you regress? So I know, obviously, that it has to be progress, not regress. So we have to progress people. Is that possible? I wonder, Dave. I mean, look, I have no experience at all. No. I mean, has anybody ever been hypnotized and under hypnosis been progressed, like into the future?
That is a really good question. Remote viewing has gone into the future.
Remote viewing has, correct. Yes. I wonder how far, and I wonder if we can actually experience future lives. That, of course, if that were true, it would completely throw out the window anything we think we know about time. Right? That's Gone. Right. Bye-bye. See you later. Yeah. We should already be there, after the Copenhagen interpretation and pretty much the cause and effect are no longer anything that we can rely on. Sorry, but so these are some speculations, everybody out there. Just some speculations. Think, all right? Think of other questions that you would ask. But going back to Dr. Wambach, right? She in later interviews she stated the following. She was interviewed, obviously, much after her books and her research, and this is what she said: "I do not believe in reincarnation. I know it, and that from a person who invested 10 years of her life, rigorous research, by the way, to disprove it." As was mentioned in the report, Dr. Wambach's results suggest that reincarnation usually happens shortly after death. In the next example, we will see an amazing case that saw a reincarnated woman who was able to be reunited with her husband and son after remembering her former life at the age of 4 years old. This famous case was thoroughly studied by both believers and skeptics of reincarnation, including the famous religious teacher and revolutionary Mahatma Gandhi. It happened in the 1930s in India, Dave.
The story of Shanti Devi. On January 18th, 1902, a daughter was born to a family named Churturburger. Residents of Mathura, India. Her name was Lugdi. When Lugdi was 10, a marriage was arranged with a man named Kedarnath Chobe, a shopkeeper in the same village. After puberty, Lugdi became pregnant for the first time, but her child was stillborn following a caesarean section. During her second pregnancy, Kedarnath took her to the government hospital at Agra, where a son was born, again through caesarean. There was some complications, however, and after several days later, on October 4th, Lugdi's condition deteriorated and she died at 10 a.m. 1 year, 10 months and 7 days after Lugdi's death on December 11th, 1926, a beautiful daughter was born to Babu Rang Bahadur Mathur, and and they lived in a small locality of Delhi. The girl was named Shanti Devi. Shanti was unusually quiet and hardly spoke until she was about 4 years old. When she started talking, she surprised her family by telling them, "This is not my real home. I have a husband and a son in Mathura. I must return to them." Shanti said that her husband was Mathura, where he owned a cloth shop, and they had a son. She called herself Chorboin, or Chowbine, Chorb's wife. The parents considered it a child's fantasy and took no notice. They got worried, however, when she talked repeatedly about it, and over time narrated a number of incidents connected with her life in Mathura with her husband. On occasions at meals, Shanti would say, "In my house in Mathura, I ate different kinds of sweets." Sometimes when her mother was dressing her, she would tell what type of dresses she used to wear. Curiously, she mentioned 3 distinctive features about her husband. He was fair. He had a big wart on the left cheek, on his left cheek, and wore reading glasses. She also mentioned that her husband's shop was located in front of Dwarkandish temple. I hope I'm not slaying all of these. The strange talk continued. By this time, Shanti was 6 years old, and her parents were perplexed and worried. Shanti even gave a detailed account of her death following childbirth. They consulted their family physician, who was amazed how this little girl correctly described so many details of the complicated surgical procedures she claimed to have endured. I just think that's amazing, right? As Shanti grew older, she insisted that her parents take her to Mathura. All this time, however, she never mentioned her husband's name. It is customary in India that wives do not speak the name of their husbands. Even when specifically asked, Shanti would only blush and say, "I will recognize him if I am taken there." Her parents thought their daughter was mentally ill and tried everything to discourage her talk, her strange talk. But Shanti continued to talk about her other family and gave a specific address and more details about her previous home, her husband, and his family, Meki.
Eventually, a teacher in Ramjas High School, Daryaganj in Delhi, told Shanti that if she told him her husband's name, he would take her to Mathura. Convinced, she whispered his name into his ear, Kedarnath Chaube. The teacher told her that he would arrange for the trip to Mathura after he had made some inquiries. He wrote a letter to Kedarnath Chaube detailing all that Shanti had said and invited him to visit Delhi. Amazingly, the teacher received a quick reply from Kedarnath, admitting that his young wife Lugdi had recently passed away. Even more amazing was that all the details Shanti had described about her old house and members of her previous family were all true. Shanti's story spread all over India through the media. Many intellectuals became interested in it. When the famous teacher and pacifist, Mahatma Gandhi, heard about it, he personally talked to Shanti and then requested her to stay in his ashram. Gandhi instigated a committee to investigate and report on the claims the little girl was making. Soon a committee of 15 prominent people, including politicians, national leaders, and members from the media was formed, and they persuaded Shanti's parents to allow her to accompany them Mathura. Upon arriving at Mathura by train, Shanti on her own quickly led them straight to her previous home. She correctly described what it had looked like years earlier, before its recent refurbishing. As a test to mislead Shanti, Kanjimal introduced Kedarnath as his elder brother. Shanti blushed and stood to one side. Someone asked why she was blushing in front of her husband's elder brother. Shanti said, "No, he's not my husband's brother. He's my husband himself." Then she addressed her mother. Didn't I tell you he's fair and he has a wart on the left side, on his left cheek, near his ear? She then asked her mother to prepare meals for the guests. When the mother asked what she should prepare, she said that he was fond of stuffed potato paranthas and pumpkin curry. Keranas was speechless, as these were his favorite meals. He asked whether she could tell him anything unusual to help him accept that this was really his former wife. Shanti replied, "Yes, there's a well in the courtyard of our house where I used to take my bath." She was also able to relate extremely intimate information, such as extramarital affairs of family members that no one outside the family could possibly have known. That's one of the drawbacks, I guess, there, right? Mm-hmm. But that wasn't enough to convince Karanath. He needed something really private that only his dead wife would know. Apparently, Lukti had suffered from painful arthritis, making it difficult for her to move. This presented problems when the couple tried to have sex. But Lukti had found a way to move that enabled her to have relations with her husband. This was an extremely private matter, yet Shanti was able to describe this in intimate detail. That convinced him. Dr. Ian Stevenson, we know well, a leading authority on reincarnation, said the following. I also interviewed Shanti Devi, her father, and other pertinent witnesses, including Karanath, the husband claimed in their previous life. My research indicates that she made at least 24 statements of her memories that matched the verified facts. Dave, it's really, really hard to discount evidence of this nature and simply say, nah, that's just nonsense. That doesn't fit into my belief system. My flying spaghetti monster is better than your flying spaghetti monster. So. And if you have a skeptic, and this is really why we chose to pretty much finish the show cycle on reincarnation with this story of the skeptic, right? Dr. Helen Wambach. 10 years she spent, interviewed 1,100 people, 1,088, and 11 of those didn't get it right? And then you've got compelling stories like this. We can no longer talk about this as tinfoil hat zone, Dave. I think we have to make a very clear statement here that reincarnation is a thing.
It is.
I think we all are part of reincarnation because remember who Dr. Wambach interviewed? Not Indians, not Asians of any descriptions necessarily. These were Californians.
That's right.
Yeah, white. I think this was the description. Let me just go back there. What she said. They were. Here we go. Here we go. Yeah. Blah blah blah. 11. Yeah. Here we go. Yeah. Here we go. There we go. One more bit. Here we go. 1960s. She interviewed. Here we go. Okay. Doesn't say what they were.
It doesn't say their origin, their current.
No, but they were all Americans, right?
That's
really. Yeah. That is really the critical thing to understand here. They all were interviewed in America, and they might have been all kinds of different races, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously. No, middle-class subjects. White middle-class subjects from California. Sorry.
Wow.
So they were 1,088 white middle-class subjects. So it is really critical to understand that this is an astounding revelation, an astounding find. You couldn't argue with the other research by Tucker and Stevenson, right? I mean, that was groundbreaking. But to have a skeptic come out after 10 years and say, "Oh, look, I tried to get it wrong, but nope, it is actually real. It's a thing."
Yeah.
But that's true science, Dave, and I applaud her for that. I really do. I think how amazing of this person that maybe even puts her academic career on the line here, her reputation to state, look, I followed the research. I did the hard work. 10 years, 1,100 people. We went to some excruciating detail here, and we got statistical analysis. We went to obscure science historians. We delved facts, recent findings, vindicated some of the statements that our subjects made, right? Such as having blonde, blue-eyed people living on the Spice Road, the Silk Road, right, in Asia, and it's really I don't know, Dave. What else can we say? It's it. I mean, the speculation here is, of course, what if reincarnation and the rebirth process are just the final mechanisms to keep us in this prison loop of reality? Mm-hmm. What if past life memories are a glitch, which is why most of us do not have them? What then does it all mean? And this is really where it hooks into the hypothesis. We are caught in this reality, and not even death affords us an escape, Dave. Not even death affords us an escape.
No.
We have a fair idea of what could afford an escape. We have a fair idea that living a certain life, living a certain lifestyle would probably allow you to escape, to go home. We also believe there may be such a thing as a spontaneous escape when we reach a certain number. Maybe the number of consciousnesses that need to be alive has to be a certain number. Right, we call this the awareness cascade, but mostly, Dave, it is about why was this cage set up, and what is the ultimate motive? But what do you think?
Well, I'll put this in a way that I think it seems to make sense to us all, and that's by asking a single question: where are these memories written? Right, because if you can recall it, how is it in this body? Right, does that make sense? That the body itself shouldn't have that memory to be able to be recalled, since your lineage doesn't connect you directly with that past life. It makes sense, right? Yeah. You could imagine. You could imagine if it was the son, like the son or daughter of someone who was in World War II, who knew of, say, remember that past example in the other show where the boy he knew his flight number, he knew the ship, he knew the method of death, he knew what conflict he was in, he knew all that stuff. If the family had ever known of any of that, then genetics could say something about the recording of that, and that it's in the body, but this isn't what's happening. So you've got no lineage to the life you lived else at a previous time. So where is this being written? It's got to be written somewhere else, and in the quantum universe, it's got to be written there, and you've still got access to it. And so is that really you? So, is that you in that quantum universe? Like the player of a video game between different games. When you died, you had to put another coin in and you had to play again. But you retained the memory from the last time you played to this time when you're playing now, where you can make sufficient choices. And that's the only analogy that I can come up with. But from our perspective, within the game, within this, trapped within this reality, this prison loop, how is it that we can still have access to that? Is it the same, Meki? Almost finished. Is it the same as the Akashic record that we can occasionally connect ourselves to? I wonder. It's yours. Yeah.
just I don't know. It's a beautiful thought. I didn't want to interrupt you. But this. Okay, so let's take a step back. I think what you just raised are some very that we have to just revisit and flesh out. One, the analogy you gave of the player of video games between games, and that is brilliant, because that's exactly this is probably the best analogy we can think of within our limited framework right now. The you, I don't want to even call it a you necessarily, but the threat that represents you, I guess, right? I think is immortal and universal, right? It exists on a level that we probably can't understand. Forget quantum here. Forget quantum. Forget all that. Mm-hmm. We're talking about a completely higher dimensional existence, so far beyond what we can actually conceive of that it actually doesn't make any sense talking about it, because we simply cannot. No. So this threat that ultimately, I guess, could be seen as you, incarnates into these blips, dot points, if you will, in time, to be Bob and Mary and Davisha and Chang and whatever, right? And experiences life. And then I think you are quite right in asking the question, well, where does it all get stored? Now, I think ultimately, primarily, your memories are yours, right? But I also believe, along with you, that there is such a thing as the Akashic record, the collective unconscious, whatever you want to call it, right? Which is accessible by us in certain special individuals under certain special conditions, where all is stored. Because what we know, Dave, from physics, and I hate to bring science into this, information cannot be destroyed. Let me say this again. It is one of the fundamental tenets of science that information cannot be destroyed. Okay, it can be, but even that is shaky now. It used to be able to get lost or be lost in a black hole, but now we think even out of a black hole, information can escape. But that's a whole completely different discussion. So information cannot be destroyed, cannot be really lost. So it has to be somewhere. Now, we don't understand at all what it is all about. We have no idea what the nature of reality truly is, right? We're looking at a record, like a vinyl record, if you remember those black ones, right, with little grooves on it, and we shake it, and we run our tongue over it, right? And this is really us trying to listen to the music or whatever is on it, but we just don't understand it, right? We look at it, we hold it, but we've got complete wrong faculties to truly examine it. The only time when we are free, and we've spoken about this, Dave, the only time when we're free is when we sleep and perchance dream, to quote a great writer. No, but if we were to dream, I believe that our minds are completely free, and I think the pineal gland enables us to access the higher levels of existence. Because I go back to it, when you dream, everything you dream makes sense in the dream, because you don't stand around asking why things are happening. You're just in the dream. You're just doing things or experiencing things, right? And it seems all perfectly normal, no matter how outrageous. You just go with it. Whereas if you wake up and you remember the dream or parts thereof, it's completely nonsensical. Some of the time you go, that doesn't make any sense. Why did I dream that? It just doesn't make any sense. But in the dream it did, because your faculties were higher. You could understand more. You were living above, our limited capacities.
That's a really good way of putting it.
Thank you. But yeah, look, and we've done shows on sleep and sleep deprivation and all that as well. So please go ahead and 8 years is a long time. So we've done a show pretty much on everything. So just have a look and see what you think about that. So we are caught, like you said, in this prison loop, right? We're caught in this reality. We're born into it again and again. I don't think anybody could sensibly argue against reincarnation. I know it doesn't sit well with people. It flies in the face of most accepted religions these days, like what they've become, at least. It is completely fantastical to certainly atheists as well, because if you're an atheist, if you died in the wool atheist, you die and you're eaten by the worms. That's it. There is no further thing that is you that carries on after death, right? Now, there are not very many explanations, and most of them are more fantastical than the one of reincarnation that would explain what these researchers have found. And sometimes Occam's razor is just that. The simplest explanation is usually the correct one. Now, we've argued this before. Who decides what Occam's razor is? Who decides what the simplest in this context, I submit that the simplest explanation for having past life memories is because you were most likely reincarnated, right? And there's a thread there as well. And we keep being born. I do want to urge my colleagues out in the world, my research colleagues that is, to progress people. Don't regress people with hypnosis. Progress people with hypnosis. See if that's possible. Maybe not. Maybe it isn't possible. That's okay, right? And I know it's dangerous, because obviously if you progress someone, you go beyond the point of death, most likely. But you do the same thing in aggression. You go beyond the point of birth and death. right? That's what you do.
That's right.
It's the same. It's the same thing. Yeah. So if you think there's a shock involved, it's the same shock you would experience going the other way. I think. Again, I have
equally.
Yeah. But no experience. It is endlessly fascinating. This is one of the great mysteries that we must focus on, Dave. This reincarnation. It is one of the great mysteries. Look, we talk about the JFK assassination. We talk about political plots and treason and conspiracies and all that. And there's a reason for it. But they're not the great mysteries. They're not the great mysteries. We all know these things happen, but they're not that mysterious. What we should ask ourselves, though, is what is being kept from us? And why is it being kept from us with such violence and determination, right? Who stands to gain? Now, the Epiphany told us that this reality needs us to be here. Again, right? We're talking about double-slit experiment. You got to observe it. If you don't observe it, you have what is called quantum. You've got the entire wave function. Yeah, exactly. You've got the entire wave function. As soon as you observe it, quantum decoherence, bang, and it collapses into the reality that we know as the now. What if there was no one there to observe it, Dave? This reality would just be one of very many possible realities, but it wouldn't collapse.
And it wouldn't be here the way we see it. If there was no one in this reality, that's the old, tree in the forest analogy. Would it actually be there? So, would this reality actually exist if there was no one occupying it or no one inhabiting it? And if we were in a different one, how would we know it was different?
Yeah.
That's the other question I've got, because there's something really strange about this reality, which seems like if someone could hack the code while we slept, it seems like they did. They hacked the code and changed it somehow. And
we all have these memories, Dave.
We do. Oh, I know. And you're right. While we're sleeping, we are free from the constraints that we have when we're awake. Our choices, our understanding, the knowledge we have, and the situations that we're placed in both environments, because when you're asleep, it's an environment. Your brain is active and doing things, and it's experiencing, which is still an environment. And yet, you're right. In your example, Meki, we know what's going on. We understand. We have a conceptual idea. But in this reality, when we try to replay it or relive it, it doesn't seem to make sense. But we had full understanding. That's the same thing, Meki, with that Akashic record. Everyone says, even our guest that was on said he knew everything. But you don't have any questions because you know it all. Isn't it?
Yeah, I know, right?
There's an irony to that.
Yeah. We both, I know you experienced it, I experienced it at a young age. I don't remember any of it. I don't remember a thing that I knew, nothing. All I remember is the feeling, right? And you remember the push in your chest. I remember this amazing feeling of, right! And this calm.
Yeah.
Real calm and comfort. That's what it's all about. Right. Absolutely. And it was very simple.
Gifted the connection as momentarily as it was. As momentary as it was.
And I hope that some of our listenership know what we're talking about. Okay, let me put it this way. Okay, I believe everything Dave tells me because I've got no reason to believe that there's any percentages in Dave bullshitting me at all, right? And similarly, I think Dave believes most of the things I say because, again, there are no percentages
absolutely
to bullshit each other. We could bullshit all of you, but we don't bullshit each other because there's no point, right? There really isn't any, especially after 8 years doing this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So these experiences that we're sharing with you, they're genuine. I'm not making it up. I'm 100% convinced Dave is not making it up. So I hope that some of you had a similar experience, and some of it, look, might have been drug related. Mine at the age of, I think it was, I want to say 5, 6, 7, young. Clearly not drug related. That was just, I don't know why it happened or how, but it's certainly something that I've also read about in literature. Some characters in literature have had these experiences. So my assumption is that these authors have either heard about it or had similar experiences themselves. So I cannot. I don't know. I don't know. This is, like I said, one of the pillar, the foundational mysteries of our existence. When we get it, and no one. I mean, this we talked about 3 people here: Dr. Wambach, Dr. Stevenson, Dr. Tucker. Yeah, 3. And there might be other researchers, of course, but these are people that have given decades of their lives to this research, because obviously they have that same kind of fire, the same kind of need to know, and want to add to it. Now, Dr. Stevens unfortunately passed on. I don't know, Dr. Wambach stayed, and now Jim Tucker has taken on the research there. But look, ultimately, why aren't there entire, I don't know, armies of scientists looking at this, trying to figure it out? Same with the placebo effect. Let's have, like, I don't know, legions researching this, Dave.
Oh, see, the money isn't on the research for the placebo effect, because they discovered what it was and they named it, Mickey. That's number one, right? You name it, put it in the box, put it on the shelf, don't ever have to ever look at it again. Though fully understanding that there's a majority of people whose placebo effect cured them, and that's what we know it as, right? It's greater than the majority. It's not greater than the majority. It's greater than the minority of what the actual drugs did. So because belief is so strong and your mind is so strong that you're able to cure yourself. I'm not saying that you can do that with terminal illness, but I'm just saying this is what the drug companies put a lot.
No. The thing is, you can't, Dave.
I'm just being very careful.
But you can't.
I'm not
I hear, but no.
Not saying you can't.
No, but it's the thing, though.
Don't stop taking. If a doctor has ordered you to take drugs, I'm going to leave that up to you to decide what you want to do with that. That's what I'm trying to say. Don't do this at home.
Oh, you're right.
All right,
you're right.
So illegally. But what have they done in Reincarnation is actually accidentally discovered that it's indeed true. So what have they done? Let's just call it Reincarnation and leave it there. We don't have to revisit it. Why aren't there legions of people? Because there's no one funding it, is what I believe, right? The people doing it are doing it because they've fallen into it and couldn't believe that it's true. They couldn't. And they're looking for case after case to try and disprove it. In fact, all it does is it bolsters the opinion that it is real, that the proof is there. The mountain of, if it's real, is greater than the, it's 99, it's like 4 nines, right? So, see how I brought that back? So 4 nines and there's 1% that to fail, right? Nice. But why did they fail? And I love your answer to that they failed only truly because maybe they weren't coming from this planet. Maybe because we didn't see what that meant. What did it mean that they failed, right? What was it that classified them a failure? So I'd love to know more about that. Mackie, there's a weird question here, and maybe I think we might have to address this in another show, and that is, Dave and Mackie, you only have a few minutes left, but what do you think about the possibility of Project Bluebeam occurring? And just so if you don't know what it is, it's a conspiracy theory that claims that NASA is attempting to implement a new age religion with the Antichrist at its head and start a new world order via a technologically simulated second coming. I
think it's entirely possible. Having said that, I think we need to discover what I think the Antichrist actually is.
Yeah, define
Dave.
First. Yep.
Right. So let's look at the feasibility of this. So number one, the technology would exist to have a technology initiated second coming. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. In fact, especially the black ops tech, and I can see that would be very much a control mechanism yet again, right? Because people right now it's uncertain times. What do you need in uncertain times? A strong voice or religious experience. Either is good, either will do the right thing for you, or well, not the right thing for you, they'll control you. Well, so it's a possibility that
carry out the objective.
Yeah, is Bluebeam. Look, many worse things have happened. You look at the Tuskegee men experiments. You look at Montauk.
Yep.
Right, where universities were collaborating with secret secret service organizations, if you will, and the government. You look at what the Nazis did prior to World War II, even, right? You look at what the Russians did to their own people. Is any of this beyond us? No, absolutely not. Come on, right? Is Project Bluebeam a possibility? The answer is resoundingly yes, Dave.
Yeah. Also, we're seeing right now the elements of a one world, government coming into play on its own by equalizing all of the countries, all the member countries, where we are slowly being equalized. Our laws, while you can't see half of the ones in the US that are all the presidential orders, they're taking away your rights, despite there being documentation to the contrary, which was your founding fathers. In Australia, we don't have such things. You're seeing the tightening of screws here, the loosening of screws somewhere else, but overall, we're becoming equalized. It's like a program to bring us to the same base, to make us maybe more, not susceptible, more accepting of a new world government or a new world order. In order, and it's been said before, that a fake alien invasion or a second coming would rally the troops. We'd have a common enemy. There'd be something that we could fight against and have to unite to do so. They're so easy. They're textbook things that can be achieved so easily from above.
If you look at Germany in the 1880s and 1890s, even in the early 19th century, 20th century, like 1900 to 1910, right? Yeah. And I know because my grandparents lived then. You would never have dreamt that it was possible for Germany to turn into what it did under the Nazi regime. Jews in the 19th century thought it was a good idea to run away from Russia and settle in Germany, large sections of Prussia and Eastern Germany at the time. Yeah. Okay, Silesia, places like that. Because Russia was not very fond of its Jewish population and conducted a lot of pogroms and killing in the vicinity of 100,000 Jews at the time. Nobody talks about that anymore. But the point is, Germany was welcoming the Jews with open arms. And then look what happened. There was an experiment conducted in American schools called, and it was actually a book that was published called The Wave, where a teacher decided arbitrarily, because the students didn't understand how the Nazis could have taken on so much and that would never happen in America and all that wonderful stuff. Yep. So he decided to separate the children to brown-eyed and blue-eyed, and give supremacy to one over the other. And within a few weeks, it had deteriorated into physical violence. Yeah. Where the children with a certain eye color believed they were superior to the other ones, simply based on the color of their eyes. What that proved, much to everybody's dismay, was that this kind of stuff can happen at the drop of a hat. If you're at all in doubt whether or not anyone is susceptible to this kind of thing, look at The Wave. Look at how Germany transformed. Look at other nations. Look at Pol Pot. Look at Stalin's Russia. Look at Mao's China. You think this can't happen? Yeah. Absolutely. You are so wrong. You are so wrong. Thanks, Bennu.
Do you know what, Mickey? I was at a conference the other day, and an education session, and that they went around the table asking people, this is a final thought. What's your favorite movie? And I said They Live and The Matrix.
Yeah.
Right?
Me too.
And they said, 100%. I don't know what that is. Hands down. And I said, well, you better have a look, because I think it's really important.
Could be.
And they just moved existential on the next person thinking I was a crackpot. But you know what? They're going to look at that movie. They're going to rediscover it. And there's now memes coming out on Facebook which are very similar to today. And while we think our leaders are doing, a reasonable job, just reflect upon, maybe the 60s or the 50s and compare them to today. I said, well, you better.
Yes, and you're right. Sorry, this is we're both, you are right, and Bennu in the chat room. So I do urge everybody, if you're not part of the chat room, please do come.
You know what?
It is what I like a lot as well. There's a lot of interaction. But you're right, Dave. I mean, very far out. People are living in a cocoon until something comes and rips it open, and then they go, I don't like it. It's cold. Close the cocoon.
Hey, guess what? There's the music. We'll see you next week for show number 398. We'll be doing Deja Vu next week. Stay tuned for Jer Bear's After Hours show, where you can be part of Radio Dart. Call in. All right. Take care, everyone. See you next week.